I'm Laura Bennett, 36 years old, living with my husband and daughter in Denver, Colorado. If someone asked me what haunts me most in life, I'd answer without hesitation. Betrayal from the very people I once called family. The story I'm about to share isn't about a typical kitchen argument or petty family squabbles over dinner. It's a deep wound, slicing through the trust of my 9-year-old daughter and forcing me to face a bitter truth. Sometimes, the ones who hurt us most share our blood. It was a Saturday evening in late fall. Denver was already freezing, the dry wind biting at my skin as I drove home from the office. I was looking forward to a normal night, the TV humming in the living room, the smell of hot soup from the kitchen, and Sophie's cheerful giggles. But when I opened the door, I was met with a heavy, unsettling silence. Michael, my husband, stood in the hallway, his face tense. He looked at me with hesitant eyes, as if unsure whether to speak. "She's in her room," he said softly. "She hasn't come out for over 2 hours. I think she's been crying." My heart sank. I tossed my purse onto the couch and rushed upstairs. At my daughter's door, I knocked gently. "Sophie, it's Mom. Can I come in?" No response. I turned the knob and eased the door open. The sight broke my heart. Sophie curled up on her bed, her face swollen from crying, clutching her phone like it was her last lifeline. I sat beside her, keeping my voice soft. "Sophie, what's wrong, honey?" She shook her head, burying her face in the pillow. After a moment, she pushed the phone toward me, whispering, "Please don't be mad at me, Mom." The screen lit up and my heart plummeted. It was a photo of Sophie, her hair unevenly cut, her face still beaming with an innocent smile. Below it, a glaring caption. Which is worse, her ugly haircut or her rotten attitude? A public poll. And worse, the list of participants left me stunned. My mother, Margaret, sneered. "Back in my day, girls didn't whine about their hair. You get what you get." My sister, Caroline, who owns a salon and cut Sophie's hair herself, commented, "Her attitude was awful, and now her look matches it." Even the kids in the family, Ethan and Bella, Caroline's children, joined in, mocking Sophie with childish but cruel remarks. I scrolled down, trembling, each comment like a knife to my chest. The mocking laughter, emojis, and vicious remarks played out before me like a nightmare. "I don't understand," Sophie sobbed, her voice shaking. "Yesterday they said I looked beautiful, clapped for my new haircut, said it was trendy. Why are they laughing at me now? Did they lie, Mom?" I pulled her into a tight hug. Her pain echoed my own childhood. Days when Caroline humiliated me, my mother took her side, and I swallowed my hurt in silence. I thought I'd grown used to it, but seeing it happen to Sophie made the pain unbearable. Questions swirled in my head. How could a grandmother turn on her own granddaughter? How could an aunt cruelly mock a child? And why was I naive enough to think that by providing money and keeping the peace, they'd value our family bond? I looked at my daughter, her small face, red eyes, and trembling shoulders in my arms. She didn't deserve this betrayal. I clenched my fists, forcing myself to stay calm. "Listen to me, Sophie," I said slowly, keeping my voice steady. "This says nothing about you. It only shows who they are. You're beautiful, you're kind, and you trusted their praise because you're someone who believes in others. That makes you so much better than them." She didn't respond, but I felt her shoulders relax slightly in my embrace. Downstairs in the kitchen, Michael was waiting. His eyes searched mine for an explanation. I shook my head. I wasn't ready to put it into words. A fire was smoldering in my chest, and I knew it would lead to a decision that would change everything. That night, I sat alone in the kitchen. The phone screen glowed with the mocking poll, each word dancing cruelly before my eyes. There were no more tears, just an eerie calm. I realized I stood at a crossroads, keep enduring like I had my whole life, or stand up for my daughter. And I knew this time, I wouldn't choose silence. Looking back, that evening was the spark that ignited everything. A dinner without laughter, replaced by a chilling silence, and a 9-year-old's tears. But from that moment, I began a journey to reclaim justice, not just for myself, but for Sophie. If you've ever been hurt by family, you'll understand. It's not like a friend's betrayal or a stranger's slander. It cuts 100 times deeper because you trusted they'd protect you. What about you? Have you ever faced a choice between keeping family peace and protecting yourself or your kids? Share your thoughts. Sometimes, just one story or word of empathy can remind someone they're not alone. There are nights I don't want to revisit the past, but it creeps back, persistent like an echo in a dark room. The evening Sophie cried over her aunt and grandmother's mockery flung open the door to my memories, pulling me back to age 13, a betrayal that left a lifelong scar. It was my middle school's spring dance. I'd spent the previous summer babysitting, mowing lawns, and washing dishes for neighbors to save every penny. All for a beautiful dress, hoping for once to walk into the gym with confidence. That navy blue dress was my pride. I still remember every stitch, every fold I handled so carefully, afraid to wear it too often before the big day. Caroline, my sister, was only 11, but already had a way of making the family revolve around her. When I was getting ready, she offered to pin the hem, adjust the straps, and smiled at me. "You look so pretty, Laura, like a princess." I believed her. I walked out of the house glowing, carrying the hope that tonight I'd be seen differently. But the moment I stepped into the school bathroom, I heard sharp laughter. Among the crowd, Caroline's voice rang out, clear and cutting. "Have you seen her? That dress looks like a curtain, and she thinks she's all glamorous." The laughter erupted, piercing. I stood frozen behind the door, feeling like my heart had been ripped apart. In that moment, I wanted to vanish from the world. That night, I came home in silence. When I mustered the courage to tell my mother, Margaret, how Caroline humiliated me in front of my friends, she just sighed. "You're too sensitive, Laura. She was just joking. Don't make a big deal out of it." Too sensitive. Those words haunted me. In my mother's eyes, I wasn't a child needing protection, but a burden for daring to ask for fairness. From then on, Caroline was the golden child. She sang off key, and the family clapped like it was a masterpiece. She scribbled a messy drawing, and Mom called it artistic talent. Meanwhile, I could get straight A's, work twice as hard, and still get a lukewarm glance. I grew up in that favoritism. Slowly, I learned to stay quiet, burying my hurt. I told myself it was fate. Carolyn was the light, and I was just her shadow. Years later, when I started my own family with Sophie, I vowed she'd never feel the pain I did. I wanted her to have a family, even if flawed, with a grandmother, an aunt, and cousins to play with. That's why I kept supporting them financially. When Mom couldn't pay her utility bills, I wired money. When Caroline opened her salon, I covered the deposit, bought equipment, and quietly filled in her losses. I even thought, if I give enough, they'll see my worth. If I stay patient, Sophie will have a place in this family. I was wrong. The day Sophie held her phone, sobbing, asking, "Why did they call me beautiful?" and then laugh behind my back. I saw myself at 13, standing behind that bathroom door, hearing my sister's mockery. History was repeating itself. And if I stayed silent, I'd become the mother who turned her back on me. On sleepless nights, I sat in the kitchen staring into the dark, weighing my choices. On one side was my blood, my mother and sister. On the other was my daughter, the one I'm absolutely responsible for. I knew if I had to choose, I wouldn't repeat Margaret's mistake. I couldn't let Sophie grow up feeling betrayed by her own family. But saying it is easier than doing it. For years, I'd tied myself with the ropes of duty and sacrifice. I believed if I pulled away, they'd collapse, and I'd be the cold-hearted one. But the family I preserved with money and patience turned out to be a blade that cut my daughter. One night, as Sophie slept, Michael sat across from me at the dining table. He took my hand, his eyes gentle but firm. "You've endured too much, Laura. It's time to set boundaries. No one gets to hurt Sophie again." I looked at my husband. In that moment, I knew it was time to turn my pain into strength. My childhood story isn't just a sad memory, it's the reason I stood up. That night, I started planning. I wasn't the silent, sensitive 13-year-old Laura anymore. I was Laura at 36, a mother who'd protect her daughter at all costs. And that was the foundation for a decision that would change everything. If you find this story compelling, comment Y. If not, comment N. Your feedback will let me know if I should keep sharing this journey. There are moments when you know you're crossing a line you can't uncross. That night, alone in the kitchen, staring at the phone still displaying the cruel comments about my daughter, my heart grew cold. But in that coldness, a spark ignited. It was time to act. No more enduring, no more hiding. I had to cut out the poison called family at its root. The next morning, I started with the simplest but most decisive step. I stopped all financial support. For years, I'd sent money almost monthly, covering Mom's utility bills, Caroline's rent to keep her from eviction, even quietly paying off small salon debts. It had become routine, like drinking a glass of water. But that day, with a few taps on my banking app, it ended. I stared at the canceled transactions, expecting fear to hit. Instead, I felt relief, like shedding a weight I'd carried too long. A weight I'd convinced myself was duty, not anymore. Next step, rebuilding Sophie's confidence. I lied to her that we were going for pancakes that Sunday morning. She agreed, her eyes still sad from the night before. But instead of a diner, I drove to a high-end salon downtown, known for fixing bad haircuts. The stylist, a middle-aged woman with keen eyes, looked at Sophie's hair and sighed. "Who did this to her?" she asked, gently touching the uneven strands. I pursed my lips. "Family." Her eyes softened, but she didn't judge. She worked meticulously, each snip precise. I sat beside Sophie, holding her hand, feeling her small fingers relax. When the final strands were smoothed, Sophie looked in the mirror, eyes wide. A shy smile crept across her face. "Do I look pretty, Mom?" she asked hesitantly. I hugged her from behind, whispering, "You're always beautiful, Sophie. No one gets to make you doubt that." In that moment, I knew I'd reclaimed a piece of her confidence. And that was just the start. That night, I opened my laptop. In the school's parent group, where people shared homework updates, planned bake sales, or asked for babysitting help, I posted. I didn't yell or curse, I just told the truth. Caroline, a professional hairstylist, had butchered Sophie's hair as a joke, praised her falsely to her face, then joined the family in a public poll mocking her niece online. I attached Sophie's photo before the fix and one after. At the end, I wrote, "If someone can do this to their own niece, would you trust them with your child's hair?" I hit post. My heart pounded, not from fear, but from liberation. The response came faster than I expected. First, a few shock and sad emojis. Then comments poured in. "This is unbelievable. So cruel. Thanks for sharing. I'm canceling my appointment at that salon. Kids need protection, not humiliation." By Monday morning, my phone was flooded with messages. Friends reported Caroline's clients canceling en masse. One parent sent a photo of the salon's appointment board, covered in red cancellation marks. Caroline called me that day, her voice frantic. "Laura, what have you done? My whole week's bookings are gone. Are you trying to ruin me?" I kept my voice calm. "I just told the truth, Caroline. You did the rest." She screamed, cursed, and hung up. Less than an hour later, my phone rang again. This time, it was Margaret, my mother. Her voice wasn't the soothing one she used with outsiders. It was sharp. "You're tearing this family apart, Laura. Over a little joke, you're burying your sister?" I closed my eyes, taking a deep breath. Her words brought back that night at 13, when she called me too sensitive. But I wasn't that trembling child anymore. Family doesn't mock a 9-year-old, Mom. I'm not destroying anything. They did, and now they're paying the price. Silence hung on the line for a few seconds, then her curt reply. "You'll regret this." She hung up, But I knew this time I wouldn't regret it. The price of truth is sometimes broken ties. But I believe it's better to face that void than live in a house full of lies. That night, watching Sophie sleep, her face more peaceful than it had been in days, I whispered to myself, "This is why. This is my strength to keep going." I knew the real storm wasn't over. Caroline wouldn't give up easily. Margaret would keep pressuring me. But I'd crossed the line, there was no going back, and I was ready. If you want to hear more stories like this or relate to what I'm going through, check out my previous videos on this channel. I thought the storm had passed when I spoke the truth. But it was only the prelude. The real storm came when those who'd thrived on my silence decided to fight back. And it hit right at my doorstep on a freezing Denver afternoon. That week, word about Caroline spread faster than I'd imagined. The parent group's whispers turned into a full-blown boycott. Her once bustling salon was now a ghost town, its appointment book a patchwork of cancellations. A close friend told me Caroline even lost a big event contract because no one trusted her anymore. I knew this would push her to the edge. And I knew Margaret, my mother, wouldn't sit idly by. All her life she'd been Caroline's defender, judge, and rescuer rolled into one. Me? I was always on the sidelines, expected to suck it up. But this time, things were different. That afternoon, as I prepped dinner, I heard a car screech to a stop outside. My heart twinged with unease. Then came rapid, aggressive knocks, as if the door might shatter if I didn't open it. When I did, there stood Margaret, her face etched with fury, and Caroline, eyes bloodshot, hair disheveled, looking like she'd just sobbed or fought her way here. Behind me, Michael stepped close, his hand steady on my shoulder, reminding me I wasn't alone. "Laura!" Margaret started, her voice sharp as a blade. "What are you doing? Trying to kill your sister? Family doesn't cut each other off over a joke." I met her eyes, anger rising but my voice oddly calm. "Family doesn't humiliate a 9-year-old, Mom. That wasn't a joke. It was cruelty." Caroline jumped in, her voice breaking. "You've always been jealous of me, Laura. Now you're using this petty thing to destroy my life. My salon's about to shut down. Are you happy?" I gave a bitter smile. "You destroyed your own life, Caroline. I just brought the truth to light. Your clients are parents. They deserve to know how you treated a child." Caroline faltered, her lips trembling, then turned to Margaret for rescue. "Mom, say something. She's gloating while I'm falling apart." Margaret stepped forward, her eyes accusing. "Laura, you've always been like this, playing the victim, thinking the world's against you. Can't you be generous for once? This is family. You can't just cut them off." Her words triggered a familiar ache in my chest. For years, I'd been labeled too sensitive, selfish, unforgiving. I'd swallowed it in silence, but today, I wasn't that scared little girl anymore. I took a deep breath and spoke clearly. "You're wrong, Mom. I'm not playing the victim. I've spent my life staying quiet to keep the peace. I've paid your bills, covered Caroline's rent, kept her salon afloat. I bought peace with money and patience, but all I got was disrespect. And now, they targeted Sophie, my daughter. That's the line." My voice echoed through the house, so clear it surprised even me. Michael squeezed my shoulder, as if to say, "I'm proud of you." Caroline sobbed, a mix of rage and despair. "You'll regret this. You're ruining our family." I replied, still calm but firm. "A real family doesn't hurt my daughter. I don't regret this. But from now on, you and Mom stay away from Sophie. She doesn't need more wounds from people who should love her." Margaret's mouth fell open, as if she couldn't believe my words. Caroline screamed again, but I didn't let her finish. I pushed the door, Michael adding his strength, and slam, it shut in their faces. The sound reverberated through the house like a final period. In the silence that followed, I leaned against the door, breathing hard. My body shook, not from fear, but from crossing a turning point. For the first time, I'd set a clear boundary. Michael hugged me from behind, whispering, "You did the right thing, and I'm right here. I closed my eyes, letting tears fall. But these weren't tears of weakness, they were tears of release. That evening, when I explained to Sophie in simple terms, she hugged me tightly. "You'll always protect me, right, Mom?" she asked. I held her close, whispering, "Always, Sophie. No one will hurt you again." But deep down, I knew the story wasn't over. Margaret and Caroline weren't the type to let go easily. They'd lost the salon, my financial support, and when someone used to relying on you loses their crutch, they'll do anything to hold on, even in desperation. I didn't expect that desperation would soon turn into a bigger crisis, one not just about money, but about life itself. I thought slamming the door that day was the end. But fate doesn't work that simply. It always finds a way to make you face what you thought you'd cut off. This time, it came as a midnight phone call. A call that made my heart seize with its first three words: "Mom's in the hospital." 3 months had passed since I stopped all support. Caroline's salon went bankrupt, its shiny sign taken down, leaving a stained wall behind. Margaret, no longer getting my monthly checks, couldn't afford her rent, and had to move to a cramped apartment in the suburbs. I heard about it through acquaintances, and honestly, I felt neither joy nor sadness, just the inevitable consequence of their choices. But when the phone rang that night, shattering my restless sleep, a strange yet familiar feeling stirred: worry. The caller was an old friend of Margaret's, her voice trembling. "Laura, your mom. She collapsed. Heart failure. She's at St. Luke's Hospital." I went numb. For a moment, I heard nothing but my own heartbeat. The next morning, as I debated whether to go to the hospital, Sophie walked into the kitchen. She'd overheard the news from Michael. Her eyes were red, her voice shaky. "Mom, I want to see Grandma. Even if she was wrong, I don't want to lose her forever." Her words pierced my heart. I'd sworn to protect Sophie from the pain I'd endured, but could I deny her this chance to hold on to family? If I refused, she might carry regret for life. I sat in silence for a long time. Two voices battled in my head, one coldly reminding me, "She never protected you," the other softly whispering, "But she's still your mother, Sophie's grandmother." Finally, I sighed and took her hand. "Okay, we'll go. But you have to promise if I say stop you listen, deal?" Sophie nodded eagerly, her eyes sparking with hope. St. Luke's Hospital was eerily quiet. My shoes echoed softly on the white hallway, mingling with the sharp smell of antiseptic. When I entered the room, I saw Margaret, the woman whose judgments once made me tremble, lying small and frail, an oxygen tube in her nose. Caroline sat beside her, hair a mess, eyes sunken with exhaustion. Caroline looked up, her eyes flashing surprise, then resentment, but she stayed quiet. My gaze settled on Margaret. She slowly opened her eyes, and when she saw me and Sophie, a faint light flickered in her clouded pupils. "Laura." Her voice was hoarse, weak. "You came." Sophie let go of my hand, rushing to the bedside. "Grandma, it's me." Margaret's trembling hand touched Sophie's cheek, tears welling in her wrinkled eyes. Then her gaze shifted to me. I stood still, torn between estrangement and pain. Finally she spoke, each word draining her strength. "I was wrong. Wrong to let you hurt all those years. And now, my granddaughter too. If I have any time left, I just want your forgiveness." The room fell silent. I heard the heart monitor's steady beep, each sound like a tap on my memories. They flooded back. Me at 13, crying for her to believe me. Me as an adult, sending money to feel accepted. And now her lying here, admitting it all. Tears fell, but not in a rush. They came slowly, bitter, proving I could still hurt for her. I stepped closer, taking her frail hand, the hand that had so often pushed me aside. "Forgiveness," I choked out. "Doesn't mean forgetting. I won't let Sophie grow up with hate. But Mom, what happened can't be erased." Margaret closed her eyes, a tear rolling down her cheek. Caroline sobbed beside her, but I couldn't tell if it was remorse or despair. As we left the hospital, Sophie clung to my hand, her eyes glistening. "Thank you for letting me see Grandma, Mom. I know you did it for me." I nodded, wiping a tear from her cheek. Inside, a small door cracked open. I wouldn't go back to being their living bank, nor let them hurt Sophie again. But I didn't want my heart to turn to stone. I chose forgiveness on my terms, with boundaries, to let Sophie grow up free of hate. That night, I lay awake. Margaret's weak words echoed, "If I have any time left, I just want your forgiveness." I knew no one could predict how much time or how many chances we'd have, but at least I'd heard her late apology, and Sophie had seen a grandmother who wasn't just harsh judgment, but also frail and regretful. I closed my eyes, telling myself, maybe this is how that toxic cycle starts to break. I once thought slamming the door on Mom and Caroline was the end, but a new chapter began from that moment. Some ties, no matter how hard you try to cut, fate forces you to face again. This time, it came in the cruelest form, a health crisis. 3 months after I cut off support, Caroline's salon was gone, its sign replaced by a bare, stained wall. Margaret, without my monthly checks, lost her rental home and moved to a shabby suburban apartment. I heard about it through mutual contacts, and it stirred no pity in me, just the natural outcome of their years of choices. But one night, the phone's ring shattered my fitful sleep. A stranger's trembling voice said, "Laura, your mom collapsed. Heart failure. She's at St. Luke's." I froze. Memories collided. The strict mother, the one who favored Caroline, the one who ignored my childhood tears. And now, that mother lay on the edge of life and death. The next morning, before I could decide whether to go, Sophie came into the kitchen. She'd overheard Michael. Her eyes were red, her voice shaky. "Mom, I want to see Grandma. Even if she was wrong, I don't want to lose her forever." Her words cut deep. I wanted to shield Sophie from my old pain, but how could I deny her this last thread of family? Forbidding it might scar her with regret. I sat in silence, torn between two voices, one cold, saying, "She never stood up for you." The other gentle, whispering, "But she's still your mom, Sophie's grandmother." Finally, I sighed and took her hand. "Okay, we'll go. But if I say stop, you listen." Sophie nodded fiercely, her eyes bright with hope. St. Luke's was strangely still. My footsteps echoed in the sterile hallway, mixed with the sharp antiseptic smell. In the room, I saw Margaret, once proud and harsh, now small, pale, an oxygen tube in her nose. Caroline sat beside her, disheveled, eyes hollow. Caroline glanced up, her eyes flashing anger, then exhaustion. I ignored her, focusing on Margaret. Her eyes opened slowly, and seeing us, a faint spark lit her dim pupils. "Laura," her voice rasped, broken. "You came." Sophie let go of my hand, rushing forward. "Grandma, it's me." Margaret's trembling hand grazed Sophie's cheek. Then her eyes met mine. I stood frozen, caught between distance and pain. Then she spoke, each word heavy, dragging a lifetime of emotional debts. "I was wrong. Wrong to let you hurt. And now, my granddaughter, if I have time, I just want forgiveness." In that moment, I was 13 again, crying for her to believe me, and now hearing the words I'd waited a lifetime for, an admission of guilt. My tears fell, not a flood, but slow, bitter, showing I could still ache for her. I stepped forward, taking her cold hand. "Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting," I whispered. "I won't let Sophie grow up with hate. But Mom, we can't erase what happened." Margaret closed her eyes, a tear sliding down. Caroline sobbed, her cries filling the quiet room, but I couldn't tell if it was regret or defeat. Leaving the hospital, Sophie gripped my hand, eyes shining. "Thanks for letting me see Grandma, Mom. I know you did it for me. I nodded, wiping her cheek. A door in my heart creaked open. I wouldn't be their crutch again or let Sophie be hurt. But I didn't want a heart of stone. I chose conditional forgiveness, not because they deserved it, but so Sophie could grow without hate's weight. That night, I couldn't sleep. Margaret's words echoed. If I have time, I just want forgiveness. No one knows how many days or chances remain, but I'd heard her belated apology, and Sophie saw a grandmother who could be frail and remorseful, not just cruel. I closed my eyes, thinking, maybe this is how the toxic cycle begins to crack. I used to think life offered two choices: cut ties completely or keep enduring. But there's a third path: forgiveness with boundaries. I realized this not in the tearful hospital moment, but weeks later, when Sophie brought home a school play invitation, her eyes sparkling with excitement and a hint of worry. Since Margaret's discharge, Caroline became her main caretaker. Their life was tough. Caroline worked part-time at a low-end salon, barely covering medical bills. No one mentioned fancy salons or social media boasts anymore. They scraped by in their small suburban apartment, far from their old glamorous life. Caroline called a few times, her voice no longer proud but weary. She didn't ask for money outright, just hinted at hospital costs and bills. I listened, then said, I can't help anymore. And I meant it. But with Sophie, I took a different approach. She begged to visit her grandmother occasionally. After many sleepless nights, I agreed, but with strict rules. I'd always be there, and Caroline couldn't lash out. I didn't want Sophie trapped in hate, but I wouldn't let her return to that toxic cycle either. The first day Sophie visited Margaret at the rehab center, Margaret held her hand, her old eyes showing rare softness. I watched, part of me still wary, but another part quietly accepting. Some blood ties, no matter how much I wanted to sever them, lived on in my daughter's heart. I'm glad you came, Margaret whispered. Sophie smiled, hesitant but genuine. In that moment, I knew at least part of Sophie's childhood memories wouldn't be tainted by resentment. Then spring arrived. At Sophie's school play, I sat in the front row as nervous as if I were performing. The girl who once sobbed into her pillow over mockery now stood tall under the stage lights, her hair neatly tied, her voice clear and confident. When the curtain fell, applause roared through the auditorium. Sophie bowed, eyes shining, then found me in the crowd. When our eyes met, she grinned, a proud, radiant smile. I saw rebirth in it. I whispered to myself, You made it, Sophie. And so did I. That night, driving Sophie home, I watched her sleep. I thought back to everything: that silent dinner, my betrayed 13-year-old self, the moment I cut off support, and slamming the door on Mom and Caroline. Each painful but necessary step led me here. A small, honest home where truth and love aren't bought. I said to myself, and to you, listening to this story, the truth tore my old family apart, but it also gave me a chance to build a new one, small, but clean and safe. One late afternoon, while tidying the living room, I caught Sophie writing in her journal. She looked up and asked, Mom, does forgiving mean forgetting everything? I paused. Her question hid an unhealed wound. I sat beside her, stroking her hair. No, honey, forgiving doesn't mean forgetting. It's choosing what's worth keeping. It's moving forward without being trapped by hate. Sophie nodded, her eyes wise beyond her years. In that moment, I knew I was on the right path. Looking back, I realized forgiveness doesn't mean opening the door to more hurt. It's building a wall strong enough to protect, with a door wide enough for humanity's light to slip through. I didn't become the cold person I feared, nor the woman who only endured and paid for fake family. Now, I stand at a new dawn. Denver's sky is clear, sunlight streaming through the kitchen window lighting up Sophie's smile. And I know I've found peace. My story may not be yours, but if family has ever hurt you, I hope you remember, Forgiveness isn't erasing the past, it's choosing what to keep so the next generation doesn't grow up in hate. Maybe my journey shows a truth. Family doesn't always mean love. Sometimes those sharing your blood cause the deepest wounds, but we can't let those wounds define our path. I chose to protect my daughter by setting boundaries and learn to offer selective forgiveness. Because forgiving isn't erasing the past, it's letting yourself move forward without hate's chains. Watching Sophie smile confidently, I know I chose right. I believe we all deserve a new dawn, where love, respect, and self-worth come first. If this story made you reflect, leave a comment below. Write Y if you relate, or N if you see it differently. Don't forget to follow the channel for more stories. I promise, each one carries a deep human value.